I've been working on building my own system as a person for a long time now. I often talk about fighting, but it seems like most people in Japan interpret that word as conflict, and they don't want to fight. I don't want conflict either, but it's about fighting, you know? It's a battle with yourself. So when I talk about myself, I mean things like my future. Yeah. I cannot accept the fact that my own need for meaning of existence, which stems from philosophy, is now being alienated. I can't take that. I wonder how strong I can hold on to it. Another thing is that Japanese people are obedient no matter what, so 𝗔𝗽liche came in and brainwashed them, and the whole thing was done. Well, medical care, education, and human education. Obedience. It's said that you should follow the lead of those who are high up. It's a saying that goes back to the old days in Japan, that those who are high up should be respected. Well, if a doctor or a country or a teacher says, "Oh, so that's what you mean," and you follow them, that's how your brain is. So if a doctor tells you that you're no good, then you're no good. That's how things are. So, it's not like that at all. For those who manage to realize this, probably by elementary school, middle school, or at the latest, high school, they understand that the expectations from parents, teachers, or the government don't help them at all and don't bring them any happiness. For those people, living in this society is a constant battle. In other words, live as your true self. From that perspective, everything around you is something that hinders or obstructs you. So, everything in your environment becomes a target to fight against. As a result, well, there are all kinds of illnesses, but by living a life that is not your true self, the brain, sometimes it's a sign that you're not living your life the way you really are. Even if you want to live as your true self, this society doesn't allow you to do that. The country itself and the people around you don't support that kind of expression, and in the end, you end up feeling defeated. There is also that saying, the thing is to resist it. Resisting that is key. But if you say, "I'm not going to walk or eat," or if you just refuse to listen, you're essentially cornering yourself. It's honestly the worst way to try to convince those around you. In the end, that can lead to all sorts of health issues as a result. So, we really need to learn what the best approach is. It's about going out into the world, getting knocked around a bit, and struggling to figure it out. I think you really start to understand that in your 50s. What is the best way to do this? That's something we have to learn. Well, that's about going out into the world, getting knocked around, and struggling to earn your way. But I think you really start to understand that in your 50s. You can't really grasp it in your 40s, right? Up until 50, you're focused on learning about gains and losses, negotiating, and making deals. But once you hit 50, you start entering a phase where you're building your own identity, and you realize there's a way of living that doesn't involve losing. Once you hit your 60s, you start to realize that there's a way of living that benefits you. So, what does it mean to live without losing? What it comes down to is nurturing the brain. Nurturing my brain. Until now, I've been completely defenseless. So, information comes in, and without being able to resist it, before you know it, unnecessary information gets stored in your brain. That information shapes your mind and body. It's a system that's built on information you don't even need. A system where you are not yourself is created by the time you reach your 40s. After that, the country is easy to handle. So the idea is that when you're young, in your teens and 20s, you should leave that sort of thing to the schools. So the government provides assistance to schools and kindergartens, and even now, for babies and toddlers, I want them to be completely human and remove all obstacles. So that's how it's become. And now, in the area of medical care, they want to thoroughly remove everything that is unique to you from your body. In short, they want to create total slaves. Well, the country is all about people who can do their job. As a result, yes, it's fine if they pay taxes, but that's the ideal state of being a citizen. And so, all citizens are a little more connected. For people who are connected to the origin, the meaning and necessity of their existence is deep in their brains, so it gets pushed deeper and deeper. That's because they're educated like that from the time they're babies, and it's hard for it to come out. That's how it is. But this causes trouble, accidents, injuries, and all sorts of things. That's what society and the country are talking about, the opposite of living without anything. This is the way to win yourself over. So if you don't have accidents, don't get injured, don't get into trouble. You won't get sick. You see, if you keep doing things this way, you'll never be able to return to your true self. That's what it is, right? This is something you start to realize by the time you hit your 40s, by the time you reach your 50s. Some people finally realize that there's a path to reclaiming their true selves. That's actually the opposite of what the government, society, and parents have been telling them all along. So illness is an opportunity. You know, up until your 40s, most people think it's better to avoid getting sick. And yeah, that's how a lot of folks see it. But for me, it's different. Since my teenage years, I've always thought of injuries, troubles, and accidents as part of my journey. I was all about creating my own troubles. I really believed that was the way to reclaim myself. I figured it out pretty early on, back in 6th grade. Did he commit suicide? Right. After committing suicide, he came back to life. That's because in this country, there is an educational morality that makes you think that your parents are the people you were made to be. So, yes, in Japan, the words parents, filial piety are used a lot. But unless you can break this cycle, you will never be able to be yourself. I felt like I couldn't live with myself. I have a desire to break free from my parents' past. Well, I was bullied and died, but my main goal was to break free from my parents' past. When I came back to life, they were no longer with me. So if my parents were telling me this and that, if I just threw them away, why did I bury them? Why was I born? Why do I exist? In what sense? I had to think about these things just to keep going, you know? I was in 6th grade at the time. Since I'm a Korean resident in Japan, I faced bullying in elementary school because I was seen as a Korean. So, in middle school, being surrounded by people from the same country, my environment changed completely. It was the first time I felt like I had a place where I truly belonged. That's when I realized I could think freely in my mind, and I started to explore the meaning of my existence. By that time, I was already becoming a bit of a literature nerd. I was reading a lot of different books. I guess that was an influence. And in the midst of all that, I started to think about the meaning of my existence. I was in the first year of middle school. Build your own system. So, that kind of thinking really hit me hard. Looking around, everyone felt like robots. I mean, I was just a first-year middle schooler, but everyone around me was robotic. I probably was a robot myself back in elementary school. After I died and came back to life, when I entered middle school and found myself in that environment, it felt like I finally got my start. That's when I realized that breaking free from being a robot was my mission. I realized that breaking free was my mission. Yeah, the first thing I needed was to find my own foundation. Right. Where exactly do I come from? Where do I come from? Right. Why was I born? What's the meaning behind it all? I spent a lot of time thinking about those questions. In the process of figuring things out, I realized that it was crucial to break free from my parents, school, and the world as quickly as possible. The first step was to get away from my parents. So, anyway, when I entered, I had to leave home. That was tough. And since I was in Kyoto, I ended up here too. No matter what happens, I'll get out of Kyoto. Kyoto is that kind of place. First of all, it was a closed place, and it didn't suit me at all. I just wanted to get out. I wanted to be liberated. My parents told me to get out of the place, so I decided to end it. I wanted to get out. I told them, if you don't let me go, I'll cut ties with you. I even brought a knife to the table, ready to make a drastic move. I was about to drop my allowance down to just a few thousand yen, and at that point, my parents finally realized it was over. They had no choice but to let me go. So, I left Kyoto, and that's when my life really began. Well, it was a big city, you know? Coming to Tokyo, I didn't know my right from my left, didn't know anything at all. It was exactly the kind of space I had been looking for. I felt like I was ready to take on the world, from that point on. Yeah, I was 16, right. I've been working on creating my own system as a person for a long time now. It's more of a process than just studying or learning. It's like being a robot, really. It's like a bunch of robots being mass-produced. You just plug in some software, and once you send the electricity through, they start moving. That's how a lot of people are these days. To break free from that, you have to ask yourself where you really come from and why. And when you do that, you realize, without a doubt, that you are human. Well, if you're human. So, what does it mean to be human? But everyone around me felt like robots. If I wanted to grow as a person, I had to distance myself from my parents, from school, and from all sorts of things that didn't relate to me. I had to keep all that irrelevant software from getting into my system. I needed to kick out everything that was already there. That was the task at hand. Tokyo was a great place. I've been doing that kind of work for a long time now. I managed to kick everything out, but then the question was, what do I put in instead? So, I started this thing where I was doing 100 jobs in 100 different regions. I traveled all over the country, working various jobs and connecting with all kinds of people, trying to figure out what it really means to be human. I didn't really know what I needed to put into myself. To figure that out, I had to gain a lot of different experiences. Learn about society, get to know people, and just understand a variety of things. What should I say? What should I avoid putting in? As I continued to engage in various efforts, I naturally started to understand things better, especially as I reached my late 20s. Yeah, it all started with an order, and that led me into the world of illness, symptoms, and healthcare. I've always been about connecting with people. From elementary school onwards, and even from junior high school onwards, when I interact with people, I want to be of use to others. I realized that this was something I needed to do when I was in the first year of middle school. I realized that in order to be of help to people like that, I needed to be myself, not a robot, so I worked hard to develop myself. I had about 80 jobs between the ages of 25 and 26. I went to places all over the country, so I was pretty accomplished, and then I entered the medical world. But there were so many things I didn't know about this world of medicine. I didn't know so much that I was at a loss, and I felt like a complete amateur, but that wasn't the case. The sick girl is concerned about her body, so there's no way she's an amateur. Since it's about her, she should definitely be a professional. But when it comes to volcanic disease, that's the education and societal notion that she's an amateur. That's what this country is like. I hope everyone becomes like that. The country is set up this way. It's just ridiculous, right? It's absolutely absurd. So, that's how it is. I've been living in resistance all this time, you know, going through my rebellious phase.